What is shadow work? What is shadow work? Let's talk about this. It's a really good question. I talk about shadow work all the time, and I kind of assume that people know because I'm a shadow worker. So, but let's break this down. Let's really explain what is shadow work. What do we mean when we say to do shadow work? So, shadow work is basically working with your shadows, breaking down your shadows, walking the path of your shadows, connecting to your shadow side, right? We all have side of the light and side of the shadow. Side of the shadow is side of our ego. Side of the shadows, our shadows are our traumas, our woundings, our subconscious behavioral patterns, everything that links us to that ego side, right? So it's not the side of the light, it's not the side of the soul. And before I give you some examples, I want to really address very important thing. And it's a misconception. And people oftentimes say that you have to, the ego death, that ego has to die. Ego doesn't have to die. Ego cannot die. Ego is the part of us that makes us human, right? We live this human experience as souls to live it for the side of the ego. But we need to heal the ego. We need to release the ego. So the side of light, the side of our soul, can hold the reins and we can really thrive in this experience, right? So as we do shadow work, as we get acquainted with our shadows, that we don't, again, I always say this to you guys, we don't carve them out and toss them away. We make friends with our shadows. Those are the sides of our psyche that were created as our armor to protect us when in early age we faced trauma, we faced pain, we faced disappointment, right? So what can be those shadows? We as humans have variety of core woundings that to a certain degree we all have. Mother wound, father wound, sister wound, abandonment trauma, rejection trauma, you name it, right? So depending on your individual traumatic, painful, disappointing events that start from age of 3-4, this is where we 3-4-5, this is where we start building that armor. And oftentimes when you talk about shadow, we have to include the conditioning as well, and I talk about this to you guys all the time. So the social, cultural, religious, family conditioning, things that the society, our family, people around us from childhood tell us that they're truth. So we take for granted. But in reality, it's just conditioning. It doesn't come from a place of ultimate truth of the soul, right? So sometimes these fall under the category of shadows and they need to also be removed. So, for example, if you have anxious attachment style, this is your shadow. If you have avoidance in your relationships or in life, this is your shadow. If you compare yourself to others, it's a shadow. If you are jealous, it's a shadow. If you have behaviors where you are ashamed or afraid to be who you are, to be your authentic self, to pursue your goals, right? That is a shadow as well. And as we work through these shadows, what we basically do is obviously we determine what are those shadows and we go back to the root cause of that shadows. And those root causes will usually be those core woundings, right? Rejection, abandonment, betrayal, trauma, so on and so forth. And as we start to understand where it comes from, we reach towards that core wound and we heal it, right? We heal it. And for some people, those core wounds will be the wounds that were created in this lifetime, and it will be enough. For those of you who are truly meant to heal completely in this lifetime, you will have to reach further to past lifetimes, because certain woundings is something that us as soul embarking on this journey of lifetimes, we've been struggling in many lifetimes, and that sort of a residue of that lineage, right? The generational trauma, the generation, when we talk about lineage of the body, so you can have wounds that you inherited from your mother, grandmother, grandfather this lifetime, but it can also be lineage of the soul, so remembrance of these woundings from the past. So I oftentimes explain this as a sort of a spiritual therapy, right? Because being a shadow worker, and I've explained this to you in the video that I've literally just posted, being a shadow worker means we all have very individual gifts, right? As spiritual teachers. Some people work as activators, some people work as motivators, some people have the ability to pull out and see those shadows, right? So someone who is a shadow worker like myself is someone that will work with you on sessions to pull out those shadows, to help you understand what do they really mean, where do they come from, how do I heal from these shadows, right? Because I often give you guys this example when we are avoidant or when we are anxious in attachment styles, right? People don't usually realize that, and it's a thing of our shadows, and it's a thing of behavioral patterns. They are patterns because they are subconscious. So someone who is avoidant, and I think I've explained this in one of my previous readings as well. I often talk about this. Someone who is avoidant, they don't consciously know, okay, I'm avoidant, so I'm gonna ghost this person, despite the fact that I'm kind of obsessed with this person and I love them and I want to be with them, but I just cannot send a message because I have this paralyzing fear, right? So they're not aware that this is avoidance that is built in childhood, because we develop our relationship and our sort of attachment style in our childhood. They're not mindful. They think that this is just who I am. This is part of me. This is part of my character. This is normal. These are boundaries. Many people who are avoidant, they just think that they have strong boundaries and they're very independent and they have strong character. Similarly, when you're anxious and you like someone and you get anxiety, you have this fear of abandonment, you start to send dozens of messages to really get a response. You don't realize that you have a behavioral pattern of anxiety. You think that you're just showing care, that you're just showing that you really like someone, that you're just trying to show them that you want to spend time with them, right? So what we do in a shadow work, we help you become mindful. This is not normal. This is part of your protective armor, of the side of your shadow. And that shadow always tries to convince us that it's okay. Everybody's like that. It is just a part of our character, right? And that shadow work, again, if you embark on the journey with a shadow worker, it's really just trying to guide you to pull those shadows, to pull the experiences, to pull the memories, to go back to your childhood, to sometimes if you work with someone like myself who's a psychic medium, we channel messages from your guides, from your ancestors, so we may hear things from past lifetimes to really help you understand, identify. And then we heal them through a variety of methods. If you watch me, you know that I love healing through separation. So we separate that part of your psyche, kind of work with it, because we're not meant to, again, hate our shadows, carve out our shadows, eliminate our shadows. We're meant to give them love, to understand that they were created to protect us. But now we're healed. Now we're grown-ups. Now we can do this on our own. We no longer need these shadows. So someone who is truly healed, they're going to have healthy attachment style. They're not going to allow themselves to be driven by emotions. They're not going to be feeling those heavy emotions of comparison, jealousy, lack of worthiness. Through shadow work, ultimately, if you reach the end of the bridge, you become someone who is really at peace with themselves, really centered, really calm. And what you mentioned as well, and it is true, that part of shadow work is done through mindfulness, really becoming very much aware. What do I do? How do I react? Who I am? What behavioral patterns do I have? What repeating cycles have I been stuck at? Through really analyzing every single thing that you do and you feel, right? So again, it is something that you can start to do on your own. Again, I've mentioned this in a previous video. I highly recommend working with a specialist because it's gonna just get you there faster and more effectively. But in between sessions, you will have to, through mindfulness, through consciousness, do these shadow work exercise on your own. I hope this was helpful. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments.